At our neighbor's barbecue party, my dress ripped and everyone saw my surgery scars. Someone yelled, "What the hell happened to her?" The whole backyard went silent before exploding into laughter. 5 days later, my surgeon called me crying after seeing a TikTok about me. "My neighbor Gina, you're sure you're up for this, Marianne? You don't have to come just because I invited you." Me, forcing a smile. If I stay inside another weekend, I might actually fuse into my sofa. Besides, I could use a margarita and some distraction. I had no idea I was about to become the main character of the internet for the worst possible reason. I'm Marianne, 43, divorced, and currently navigating what I hoped would be the second act of my life after surviving breast cancer. I live in Richmond, Virginia, in a quiet, older neighborhood full of retirees, dog walkers, and young families. I've lived here almost 10 years, in a house I used to share with my ex-husband, Alan, and our daughter, Riley, who just turned 18 and recently moved in with her dad in Alexandria for college prep and, probably, because things had gotten a little strained between us. Earlier this year, I had a double mastectomy and reconstruction surgery. It wasn't elective. The cancer had come suddenly, cruelly, and I did what I had to do. I made peace with the scars. I did the physical therapy. I even started therapy. I was trying to feel like a whole person again. It had been a long spring of healing, hiding, and trying to figure out who I was without breasts, without a marriage, and without the daughter who used to fill the house with noise. Every summer, the neighbors across the street, Gina and her husband Russell, throw a massive barbecue. It's the only big social event in the neighborhood. People set up folding chairs in the driveway, the men compete over who grills best, and the kids play tag until they're red in the butt. This year, Gina was insistent. She showed up at my door with a pitcher of homemade margaritas and said I was coming whether I liked it or not. I was grateful, if a little wary. The truth is, I was afraid to be seen. Not in the metaphorical sense, I mean literally seen. I hadn't been face. It's very suburban, very nostalgic, and very much not the kind of thing I'd been up for lately. Out in anything sleeveless or form-fitting in months. Even at home, I was covering up. But I thought, maybe this is good for me. Maybe it's time. I picked a loose navy wrap dress from the back of my closet. It was light, breezy, and forgiving. I did my hair, put on some earrings, even wore a little lip color. I felt okay. Not beautiful, not even confident, but okay. Enough. The barbecue was already in full swing when I got there. People waved, smiled, offered me a plate. The grill smoke carried the scent of hot dogs and spice rub. The Jenkins kids had set up a lemonade stand and were overcharging adults with hilarious seriousness. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was somewhere I belonged. Then, it happened. I was reaching to set down my drink on the folding table when I felt a breeze, and then a snap. The wrap tie had caught on the metal edge of the table. The dress jerked, the seam split, and the back of the dress opened completely. Instant exposure. My chest, sides, and lower back, all scarred from surgery, were suddenly on full display. There was a beat of silence. Then a teenage boy, maybe 15 or 16, shouted, "What the heck happened to her?" I froze. My skin burned with humiliation. I could feel the heat rise into my ears. Time slowed down, like it does in those dreams where you try to run but can't. People turned. I saw faces registering what they were seeing: confusion, horror, pity, laughter. Yes. Laughter. Someone started chuckling. Then someone else. Nervous laughter, awkward, but it grew, like a ripple across the backyard. Gina rushed over with a towel, her face pale. She wrapped it around me and kept saying, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." I couldn't even look at her. I walked out without saying a word. I left my car and walked home. It was only 3 doors down, but it felt like a mile. I didn't come outside for 4 days. I didn't answer texts. I didn't check Facebook. I didn't even tell Riley. I felt like my soul had been peeled open in front of the neighborhood. The scars were bad enough. But the laughter? That gutted me. On the fifth day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it the first time. They called again. I finally answered, more out of annoyance than curiosity. Marianne? A familiar voice. It was Dr. Leland, my surgeon. He sounded shaken. I just saw something. Are you okay? There was a pause. Then, I realized he was crying. I saw a video, he said. Someone posted it on TikTok. The barbecue. It's gone viral. It's awful. I sat down. He went on to explain that the video showed everything, my dress tearing, the kid shouting, the moment of shock. Someone had zoomed in, captioned it with something like "Barbecue turns into medical mystery LMAO, and it had over 2 million views. People were mocking my body. My scars. My trauma. Dr. Leland told me he felt responsible somehow. He kept apologizing. He said I was strong. Beautiful. That what I went through should be honored, not mocked. I didn't know what to say. I just cried. But the story didn't end there. Strangers began messaging me, women, mostly. Some had had similar surgeries. Some were in treatment. Some had never had cancer but saw what had happened and were furious. One woman told me her 10-year-old daughter asked what happened to the lady with the strong chest, and they had a whole conversation about bravery. Support groups reposted the video, but not to shame me. To defend me. To tell the real story. Suddenly, I wasn't a punchline. I was a symbol. A mirror. A rallying point. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want it. But something about seeing those comments, those messages, made something inside me shift. The shame I'd been carrying, it didn't disappear. But it stopped being the only thing I felt. Over the next few days, my inbox, one I hadn't touched in months, became a flood zone. Messages from strangers, mostly women, poured in. They didn't know me, but they knew the moment. That moment. And somehow, they understood it in ways I hadn't allowed myself to. I saw myself in you, one woman wrote. It's been 11 years since my mastectomy and I still change in the dark. You reminded me I don't have to. Another said, your scars are a map of survival. I wish mine were visible sometimes. Maybe people would understand why I'm so tired. There were hundreds more like that. I didn't respond to most of them. I wasn't ready. But I read every single one. What struck me most weren't the pity messages. It was the sheer rage some women expressed. Rage on my behalf. For how I was treated. For what that moment represented, how our culture still, after all these decades, doesn't know how to respond to a woman's body when it doesn't conform, or when it tells the truth. That rage gave me something I hadn't had in a long time, permission. Permission to feel angry. To not just bury it under guilt or being mature or telling myself it wasn't a big deal. Because it was. It was a big deal. Someone reduced my deepest trauma to a viral joke. And a crowd, my neighbors, laughed along. Even if it was awkward or nervous laughter, it was still laughter. Gina came by twice in the days that followed. She didn't push her way in. She left banana bread the first time, and the second time, a handwritten note, Marianne, I have replayed that moment 1,000 times. I didn't stop him. I didn't say anything. I didn't do what a friend should have done. I was shocked, and I froze. That's not an excuse. It's a confession. You deserved better from all of us. Gina, I didn't text her back right away. I wasn't ready for that either. Russell didn't reach out at all, which honestly, wasn't surprising. He's the kind of man who organizes the barbecue but can't remember your birthday if it isn't attached to a grill. But on my next grocery run, my first time really going out again, I ran into Gina at the produce section. We made eye contact. I braced for awkwardness. Instead, she walked over, hugged me, and whispered, I'm so sorry. That was it. And for the first time since it all happened, I didn't cry. I just nodded. The viral video kept gaining traction. A few news outlets picked it up. Nothing major, mostly human interest segments. Neighborhood barbecue incident sparks nationwide support for cancer survivor. My name wasn't used, thankfully, but the story was clearly mine. Then came the reporters. Local ones at first. Then a few online magazines. Buzzwordy places that thrive off stories like mine, stories of humiliation turned empowerment. At first, I said no to every interview. But then I got a message from a woman named Colette. A producer from a podcast I listen to sometimes, actually. She didn't ask for an interview. She just wrote, "I saw the clip. My mother had the same scars. She passed last year. I wish people had treated her like the survivor she was. If you ever want to talk, not for content, but just, human to human, I'm here." I wrote her back. That conversation was the first time I said the word violation out loud. That's what it had been. Not just embarrassment or bad luck. It was a violation. And the more I said it, the more I realized how many times in my life I'd experienced that same thing in different shapes, when Alan cheated, when doctors talked about me and not to me, when coworkers made comments about my weight during chemo, as if illness had become a makeover. And this barbecue moment? It was just the loudest echo of all of that. Colette and I talked for nearly 2 hours. I didn't even realize until the end that she'd cried at one point. She asked, gently, if I'd ever consider sharing my version of the story. Not for the podcast. For me. She said it could be healing. I wasn't ready yet. But I was closer. About a week later, I opened my front door to find an envelope tucked into the side of the screen. No name on the front. Inside was a letter. Typed. "Dear Ms. Briggs, I was the one who yelled that thing at the barbecue. I know you probably hate me. You should. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to be mean. I swear. I didn't know you'd had surgery or cancer or anything. I was just being stupid. My cousins dared me to yell something shocking, and I did. I didn't know what I was yelling at. Then I saw the video later. I watched it like 10 times. I couldn't sleep after. I didn't know people could laugh at something like that. And I didn't know I could be the one that made it happen. I told my mom everything. She made me write this. But I also wanted to. I hope you're okay. I want to be better. Zach, the kid from the barbecue, **I sat with that letter for a long time. He was just a boy. Probably scared. Probably dealing with the way boys are taught to handle discomfort, with jokes and dares and shouting over their own uncertainty. I didn't forgive him immediately. I still haven't entirely. But I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the drawer with the others. The ones from women. From mothers. From survivors. From strangers. I realized something that night, sitting alone on my porch with a mug of tea and the cicadas buzzing. This moment, this awful, viral, humiliating moment, was no longer just mine. It had become a mirror for hundreds of people. And somehow, in the middle of all that pain, there was a strange kind of power in that. In the weeks that followed, I didn't leave the house much, but not because I was hiding. I was incubating, I guess. Processing. Letting the noise of it all settle. The messages slowed down. The video eventually lost its grip on the algorithm. People moved on, the way they always do. But I didn't. Not in the usual sense. I'd spent most of my adult life playing a very specific role. First as a wife, quiet, dependable, emotionally neat. Then as a mother, self-sacrificing, structured, always with a snack bag in my purse. Even when I got sick, I tried to perform that version of myself. Making people comfortable. Minimizing my pain so they wouldn't feel helpless. It's wild how deeply we're trained to make others feel okay while we're bleeding inside. But something about that video, that moment, shattered the script. I couldn't go back to being tidy Marianne anymore. I didn't want to. So I started writing. At first, just in a notebook. Late at night, after dishes and laundry, with a single lamp on and silence in the rest of the house. I didn't censor myself. I wrote about the anger. About Alan and the quiet way he drifted out of our marriage during chemo. About Riley and how it hurt when she left so eagerly. About how even in survival, I sometimes missed the woman I was before, pre-scars, pre-fear, pre-everything. Eventually, I moved to the computer. I posted something on Medium, anonymous at first. A piece titled What They Saw at the Barbecue. I described the moment, the rip, the silence, the laughter, and then I filled in what they couldn't have known. The surgeries. The drains. The nights I woke up clawing at phantom pain. The way I'd practiced covering myself in the mirror before the party, hoping no one would notice my new shape. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't polished. But it was honest. That post went viral, too. Not in a sensational way, there were no jokes, no zoom-ins. Just raw, real human pain. Women from everywhere commented. Some men, too. People who'd watched loved ones go through treatment. People who were in it now. People who'd never heard someone put it into words before. I received an email from a counselor at a local women's shelter, asking if she could print it to share in a support group. I said yes. I said yes to a lot of things that month. Coffee with Gina. A Zoom with Colette from the podcast. An invitation to speak at a wellness seminar for cancer survivors. I started saying yes to myself, too. To small pleasures. Long walks in the cemetery by the river, where the tombstones are old and the magnolias bloom wild. Singing in the car again. Reading books out loud to nobody, just to hear my voice fill a room. One day, I even wore that same navy wrap dress again. Not because I forgot what had happened. But because it didn't belong to that moment anymore. It belonged to me. Then came something I hadn't prepared for. Riley came home for the weekend. She walked through the door like she hadn't been gone a day, dropped her bag in the hallway, and went straight for the fridge. "You still buy the expensive yogurt," she said, teasing. I smiled. Some habits die hard. We talked for hours that night. About college applications, her new friends, her part-time job at a bookstore. She told me one of her classmates recognized me from the viral clip and asked if I was that woman from TikTok. "What did you say?" I asked, tensing. She shrugged. I said, "Yeah. That's my mom. And she's badass." I didn't cry. I almost did. But instead I leaned back in my chair and let it wash over me. Not just pride. Not just relief. But the feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was seeing me clearly now, not just as mom, but as a person. Later that night, I caught her scrolling through her phone on the porch. She showed me a meme about trauma bonding that made us both laugh harder than we should have. Then she turned to me and said something simple, something small that landed harder than any apology. "I'm sorry I wasn't here when it happened. I didn't know how much you were still hurting." I reached over, touched her hand. "You weren't supposed to fix it. Just knowing you care is enough." And it was. I don't know what's coming next. Some days, I still feel gutted by the memory of that moment in the backyard. The laughter. The faces. The heat of shame that clung to me like a second skin. But I also feel looser. Less confined. Like I'd been unwrapped in a different way. Not undone. Uncovered. And maybe that's what survival really is, not just staying alive, but reclaiming the pieces of yourself that the world tried to bury under laughter, or shame, or silence. A few weeks after Riley's visit, I received an invitation. Hand-delivered in an envelope with gold trim. From Gina and Russell. Another party. This time? A fall neighborhood potluck. More low-key than the barbecue, the note promised. "Come if you're up for it. No pressure. But we'd love to have you." I laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny. Because it felt like a test. And I was ready. I took my time getting ready that night. Not out of vanity, but out of intention. I wore a simple, sleeveless dress, nothing flashy. It fit my body now, not the one I used to try to dress. My scars weren't completely visible, but they weren't hidden either. Just there. Part of me. I arrived a little after 7. Not late. Not early. Just on time enough to make an entrance. Gina greeted me first. She looked nervous, like she expected me to bolt. Instead, I handed her the butternut squash salad I'd made and smiled. "Thanks for the invite," I said. "It smells amazing in here." "Oh," she stammered, "yeah, Russell's trying a new brisket rub. We're, really glad you came." The living room was full of the usual suspects, neighbors in flannel, kids sneaking cookies off the dessert table. I could feel the glances. Some subtle, some not. Let them look. I made my round slowly. Calmly. I asked about people's kids. Complimented the baked beans. I even chatted with Russell, who looked like he might crawl into a sofa cushion to avoid saying the wrong thing. But the most surprising part? Zach was there. The boy. The one who'd shouted. Taller now, maybe growing into himself. Standing awkwardly by the drink table, shifting from foot to foot. Our eyes met across the room. He looked down immediately, like a child who'd touched a stove once and still felt the burn. Later, as I was refilling my water, he approached. No parent prodding him. No camera watching. Just him. "Hi," he said quietly. "Ms. Briggs." I wasn't sure if I should say anything. I waited. He looked up. "I meant what I wrote. I really am sorry." I nodded once. "I know. And I meant what I said in my reply." He blinked. "Wait, you replied?" "I didn't send it," I said. "But I wrote it." "That's something." He let out a shaky breath. "Well, I've been volunteering at VCU Medical twice a week. Pediatric wing. Mostly just playing board games with kids, but it matters to me now. Stuff like this. People." I tilted my head. "Then maybe something good came out of all this." "I think so," he said. "And I hope someday you'll forgive me." "I already have," I said. "But don't make it a habit to rely on forgiveness. Earn it." He nodded. Sincerely. That moment would have been enough. But life, I've learned, occasionally has a flair for poetic justice. 2 weeks later, the neighborhood association announced something new, a community lecture series. Local speakers, shared experiences, growth through storytelling. Guess who was invited to speak at the first one? Yup. Me. Apparently, after my blog post made waves, Gina forwarded it to the board. Quietly. She didn't tell me until after the fact. "It just felt right," she said. "Everyone saw the version of you in the video. They deserve to see the real one now." I agreed to do it. The night of the event, the library meeting room was packed. Folding chairs set up in rows. Russell in the back row, arms crossed like someone bracing for a court verdict. Gina front and center, teary-eyed before I even started. I didn't read the blog. I didn't recite a script. I just talked. I told the story. The full one. The cancer. The marriage. The daughter. The scars. The barbecue. But I also talked about strength. About not needing permission to exist. About how laughter at someone's pain doesn't just humiliate, it steals something sacred. And how taking it back isn't just healing. It's rebellion. At the end, I didn't wait for applause. I just thanked them and sat down. The silence that followed was thick. Not tense. Just deep. And then it came. Slow at first, then steady. Applause. Not the kind people give out of obligation. The kind that carries meaning. That says, "We see you now." Afterward, I stood near the refreshment table with a cup of cider. Neighbors came over one by one. Quiet compliments. Some awkward apologies. Some tearful thank yous. One woman whispered, "I wish I'd had your courage when I was younger." And then, this is where the revenge part finally settled in, Russell approached. He looked uncomfortable. He wasn't used to not being the most important man in the room. "I read the article," he said. "And your speech." "I didn't expect that." "No," I said, sipping my cider, "you probably expected me to keep my head down." He glanced away. "I didn't handle things right. I guess I was embarrassed." "Embarrassment isn't an excuse," I said calmly. "But I appreciate you listening tonight. That's more than you did at the barbecue." He nodded. No defense. No excuse. Just a small, deflated silence. I turned back to the table and said, "Oh, and next time you host something? Maybe make the theme respect over ribs." Just a thought. He huffed out a laugh, the kind people give when they realize they're not going to win. And that was enough for me. Not screaming. Not confrontation. Just standing in my truth, while the people who laughed once had to sit with the fact that I wasn't just back, I had risen higher than they ever expected.